Welcome everyone to our event, My Life, My Business. Wish I was here. And it's been quite a journey. We've been not broadcasting as much in the last while because either due to travels, public holidays, and the like. And the last time we actually broadcasted anything was when the topic was about changing what you want and understanding what your core values are, and then assessing whether or not you fully engaged in your life, because we talk about engagement to really enjoy this journey, whether it's in your career, life in general. And we came up with a little model that was introduced, and also we unpacked what we think is the readiness to act. And normally this is combined with introducing change. You do anything new, you're introducing change, and following an approach when you do want to introduce change. So I encourage you to go and listen to episode 89 on the YouTube channel, the Mufasa Coaching Practice, or you can just listen to our playback on the platform itself. So, but without further ado, a warm and hearty welcome to my co-host, Dr. Shanaaz Hussain, and who's going to be sharing her topic of choice this afternoon. So over to you, Shanaaz.
Hi, Jacques. Thank you for that. And I'm again, my apologies about last week. But I thought just before we were chatting and we were talking about, sort of the time period, and we both will be traveling. And then it reminded me of when I left the UK, when I lived there a couple of years ago or many years ago. And what I'm actually going to be talking about today, I've called it good goodbyes. And I always talk about this when I'm working with families or when I'm working with children particularly, but I think, and or with adults who work with children and families, but also when I'm working in generally with large numbers of groups as well. And I've entitled it Good Goodbyes, and it's how to end things well. And so, in my profession, what I've discovered is that many of life's endings, now it's not, don't worry, it's like not a sad topic, and it's going to make you depressed, but many of life's endings, whether it's breakups, divorce, graduation, getting fired, moving on, or the death of a loved one, they provoke a lot of feelings of sadness, anger, grief, rejection, or abandonment. And why I wanted to talk about this is that um, just I'm going away for about almost 3 months. So, in a sense, I've needed to have say goodbye, in a sense, to some people. And saying goodbye to me is really important just for a number of reasons, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But I also wanted to bring it in and discuss it because I think it's something that maybe we don't think about. So in social work or in counseling, they always talk about when the client is when you are ending therapy, or you're ending counseling, or they call it termination. So it's a little bit related to termination, but I'm going to also just chat generally with my experiences. And where I get this term good goodbyes from is that when I left the UK, I was in the position I was in was actually as a play therapist, and I was working with a lot of children. And part of my duty to kind of see that I was also okay, because it was children who experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of abandonment, etc. I had to be in therapy myself. And so here I was needing to end the counseling with them because I was returning to South Africa, and I was having a challenge with needing to say goodbye to these kids that I was actually in a long term counseling relationship with. I was also worried that they're going to feel that I was feeling guilty. I was worried that they're going to feel that I'm abandoning them. I was worried about, who's going to like pick up after I left, and are they going to, so I was having lots of like things going through my head, in addition to me thinking about like, oh my word, I'm returning to South Africa. I was ready to do that and everything. It was a bag of emotions. And then I had my session with the psychotherapist that was there, and she's lovely, and she said to me, Shanaz, you need to have a good goodbye with the kids. And then she started to tell me a little bit about what a good goodbye is. And she said to me that unless I am dealing with all the emotions that comes along to ending relationships, ending things, and dealing with the mixed emotions, it's going to be very difficult for me to end and do the termination process with the children, and it's not fair to the children. And then I realized that, I needed to start thinking about what is going on for me when I say goodbye, what is when I end things. But, it didn't only stop there. She told me that, remember, and I loved what she said, because when I'm counseling people who are grieving, I remember her words. And what she says is that things can end because relationships can end, or things can come to an end because it's going well. Not all things end because it's bad. And I think that often, because of the mixed emotions that go along with endings, whether that's ending the work year, ending a project, we find that many people avoid endings or saying goodbye. But when we avoid endings or saying goodbye in a meaningful way, it actually doesn't prepare you for the beginning or the new project that you are going to start. And so what it does is it's like it remains unresolved, and you have what we call unfinished business. So you can imagine, if you're not ending things well, then you're not going to start the other thing well also. And so endings and beginnings are quite connected. And we don't want people, I didn't want to have what we call unfinished business. And at the moment, it's literally that for me, where I decided that everything at work needs to be sorted out by last week Friday. But well, not unfortunately, as life works, is that I am not in control of other people. So I have a little unfinished business that I've got to carry into Wednesday when I leave. But I want to go in a little bit further. What does it mean in general? So, what is a good goodbye? A good goodbye is when you prepare those you are leaving for your departure. I'm going to say it again. A good goodbye is when you prepare those you are leaving for your departure. And so it's not about rushing, rushing to finish things off and just moving on to the next project, but it's actually taking the time. And it's about talking sometimes about difficult emotions such as sadness, such as longing, missing each other, and maybe you also express anger, fear, or feeling abandoned. So there are difficult emotions in saying goodbye or ending things. Like I said, it can even literally be, and I don't only want you to think of your own ending, but sometimes I have parents who really don't understand why the child is finding it so challenging in the new school year. And often it's because the children did not have a good goodbye in their last grade. Maybe they'd become really attached to the previous teacher, etc. And I also have discovered that people struggle with being able to end things well when their experience of endings or separation was traumatic, perhaps. Or I often find that people have this idea that if someone passes on, they can't include the child because, children won't understand. However, that can profoundly affect how a child deals with transitions. And so, transitions and endings are a natural part of life. And what I discovered when I am busy, when I've been in long term counseling with clients, you actually discover that they start to revert back to their old behavior. All of a sudden, a crisis comes up. So you actually find that those people prolong the ending then, or they avoid ending. What is also important is I actually find that it is really important to know when you need to end things, because otherwise what tends to happen is you can stay in a job that doesn't promote your growth. You can stay in situations that is not always adding to your value or your skills, or you can stay in a project, etc., in a situation that isn't always valuable. And this is often because we want to avoid endings. We find that we struggle to deal and to speak about things like, I'm going to feel guilty. I have fear. But what I do want to add is when we start to address and we have a good goodbye, when we prepare our children, our families, our colleagues, even yourself, uh, then we need to not, then we will discuss the painful things, the sadness, the missing each other, even a colleague. If you start a new job, maybe you've needing to say goodbye to a colleague, and then it's about talking about those things. And they say that what we can do, whether it's saying, um preparing yourself for the loss of a loved one, then it is about talking about difficult and painful emotions, but we also reflect on beautiful moments of love, joy, and fun. And so the good times and the memories. So, what you actually find then is when we avoid talking about the painful emotions of ending things, or we avoid saying goodbye to people, we rob ourselves of reflecting on the beautiful moments that we've had with those people, the fun and the joy in that connection. And so therefore, good goodbyes, saying good goodbyes are important so that we can value the relationship and the connection. And so it will involve actually both talking about painful emotions, but also talking about the good times. Um, and so what you actually then find is that um and what my psychotherapist kind of told me, Anna was her name, she says that in a sense when we are in relationship with people, the relationship doesn't end necessarily, it's just different. And when I've worked with people, whether they've lost someone through loss of natural causes such as death, or even when they've said goodbye and people have immigrated, or it's the emptiness and the children have left the home, um what you can think about is that the relationship itself doesn't end, but the relationship becomes different. And when I understand, for example, even with my mom, who has passed on, as long as I keep my mom and our relationship in my mind, as long as I remember her, as long as I think of her, then the relationship actually hasn't ended. It's just different. And what I have felt when I could tell the kids that I needed to end these relationships with, when I can tell them, you know what, the time that we shared together is always going to be part of us. I'm always going to remember them. And so that means that our relationship, in a sense, hasn't ended. It's just different. I just think of them now. They may not be in my space, I may not see them, but it doesn't in a sense end. And what she wanted me to understand then, which I loved what she said, um there are natural endings and transitions in life. And what we do when we have these good goodbyes with people, we're able to share in this way, what we actually tell them is that things can change in life and things can end in life, because because other things and other opportunities are going well, or it will be better. And I remember sort of kind of reflecting on my mom, and thinking about her, that things ended, the relationship changed with my mom passed, but what also happened was that she was wanting to be what she considered in a better place, and so I could make my peace with that. And when I understand that things can change and things can move on and end, because there are other opportunities, and things can end because it's going well. It is a really different way of understanding transitions in our life. So this is like really particularly important when we're thinking of moving to another town, going to a new job, or children going to a new class. And what we actually have, what we then understand, is that we can keep those important people close to us, even though they are not with us. And it's not only then about the relationship, but it's also about yourself, in terms of who you were and the person that you were. You can understand that this is how you have grown, and maybe this new job is something that you deserve, or the new opportunities will present itself with, yes, it's challenging to leave, but it's also good to grow. And I think that, and so that is why when we end things, it's important then that we connect with that part of ourselves and with others. Some of the writers, that whose work I look at, they actually say that termination, the ending of a relationship, or the ending of therapy in this case, pushes deep buttons on an unconscious level, and feelings of fear or abandonment may come up. And so even if you are the person moving on and others are being left behind, they may have fear and feelings of abandonment, and they may be angry with you. And I had to deal with that. I had to deal with the anger of some of the young people, and I had to explain it to them. And so I think that we can get, if we understand that others, when we move on, others may have feelings of fear and abandonment, and we prepare for them, then we can transition to our new place in more effectively. Otherwise, we are going to continuously feel guilty and about leaving a situation. And so it's kind of important then that we think about um, endings and beginnings as being separate, but sort of connected as well. And so what they actually say is that how we end things actually tell us a lot about our separation, maybe our separation anxiety. It tells us a lot about our beliefs and our values. And we can only prepare others for when we leave, or ending a situation, when we have dealt with our own emotions and addressed what that means for us. And so if you are going into a situation which you want to close or end, or even a project or something like that, it's really important for you, whether you're a leader, whether you the head of the family, or you leading a project, all when we in our families, in a sense, we're all leaders. It's really important for you actually to take time and reflect on, what does this ending mean for me. And once you find that you can address some of the issues, why maybe you struggle or avoid endings, then it will really help you move on to the next stage of your project, or the next, the new job, or the new beginning that you intending to have. And sometimes for me that meant kind of dealing with issues around separation from my father. And I find it very challenging. So my because my father was had bipolar, my father would often, not that often, but at least once a year or twice a year, my dad would have to be hospitalized. And so that created issues for me around endings and goodbyes. We also for a week, when my just before my dad was diagnosed with bipolar, we thought my dad had passed on because we couldn't find him for a week. And so that also creates issues around me, for me, in terms of feeling abandoned, or I need to take care of myself when I say goodbye. And this this is where all my craziness around leaving for the UK on Wednesday comes into play. Like, I want to sort everything out, and I have to accept that not everybody is there where I am. However, what do we need to do then? So, what we need to do is we need to explore the feelings and the potential sense of loss for the client if you are in a coaching situation, even, or for the team if the project or something is ending. You do need to realize, even though we can celebrate the ending, the success of a project, there may still be feelings of loss, and we do need to think about that. Then we should discuss the positive and the negative reactions to ending the situation, whether that's a relationship or whether that's therapy. Sometimes you need to discuss it, have that conversation in your head with someone, right? Or you need to have it with the person. They also suggest that you focus on the gains and the progress that has been made, whether that's in a project, or whether that is a person, and whether that's me in counseling, and for example, me going to the UK now for 2 months. I'm needing to see this as an amazing opportunity for my career, but I also need to acknowledge, that there's some kids, church kids, that I'm leaving behind, and I'm hoping they're going to be taking care of them, etc. So there are little bits of feelings of loss for me also, which I need to kind of understand, that even though it's going to be a short period of time, I do have there is a sense of loss. I'm not going to see my niece for a bit, etc., rather than pretend I'm very excited and happy only. They also then suggest that think help, if you're working with a client, is to let them recognize the positive changes, because what you can find, and this is what I've discovered in counseling, or even when I've been involved with in a relationship, or someone is trying to end a relationship, the partner may sense that this relationship is not going in a this relationship is going to end. The partner then preempts it by having a crisis, and then the person who wants to end the relationship feels really bad that they are leaving and ending the situation when this is the bad situation. And I even know a situation with a project where a friend of mine invested, well, she was asked another friend to manage a conference. The friend who was managing the conference wasn't doing a very good job, and my friend wanted to pull out and withdraw the money, etc. She didn't do that because she was concerned about the business of the person who was going to manage the conference. And unfortunately, the conference didn't go down very well, and she really regretted it. So be aware, if you're the leader and you want to end things, it can be challenging for the others who are involved. They may feel, like I said, that you're abandoning them, or you may feel that you're abandoning them and you may feel guilty. So it's important to kind of address that. And then the other thing that I do want to also add, and sort of finally, is to celebrate the ends. As we celebrate beginnings, in a sense, and new opportunities, let us also not forget to celebrate endings. And we can do that in a range of different ways with people, whether that's a project, whether that's the end of the year, it's really important to have rituals of endings. And so that's me. I bought one or two people some cake at work, and I hugged them today and said goodbye, etc. And so that was my way. And had lunch with my family yesterday. So that was my way of attending to my needs of leaving for a few months. And yeah, I'm open to questions or comments, Jacques. Thanks. I see you've made several.
Well, I was just capturing some of the thoughts as you were
Yeah.
sharing them. But I was just thinking, in your case, it's a temporary ending. It's a bit of an interruption to status quo, and there is a temporary loss rather than a permanent loss. And and what is interesting to me is that you would also, even if it's a temporary ending, there's still this ceremonial way. This what
Yes.
is your word?
As I was saying, rituals.
Rituals, that's the word.
Yeah.
Yes, you, you,
Yeah.
you still kind of perform the ritual, soften it. This is only temporary in your case. There might be sadness or loss of relationship, loss of contact, maybe not loss of relationship, loss of physical contact. In the current context that we are living, I mean, we have technology, etc., but physical, seeing you, being with you, experiencing you, that'll be temporary. So I was wondering, is when it's temporary, is it easier for people to process the loss, the temporary loss? Is it easier for them to rationalize,
I
to
don't think
to be
so. I
happy
think
for
that
you?
what happens, I think what happens is that your experiences of loss is triggered. And so you may suppress it and you may wonder what's going on, but it's still there. So in other words, it may be, I think it depends on the individual. And so for me, even though this is a temporary loss, a lot of things have come up. And so about previous losses. And it's almost like, you can't measure the necessary trauma in a way. So it's like measuring an emotion. I am experiencing several emotions.
Okay, so it's not, so you don't take it for granted. Meaning, I'm going away for a bit and I'm coming back, so be happy
Yeah.
for me.
No,
You
no,
still.
I don't. I don't. Because in a sense, when you think about it, anything can happen. That's life.
Okay, all right.
So it is about, it's the individual, but it's not. What I'm saying is that um just because it's temporary does not mean that you don't feel these things. You will feel all the emotions even though it's temporary, because the brain doesn't understand time. Yeah.
Okay. A
There's
lot there
there's a
to still
there's a yes
unpack.
there's a little part of your brain called it's the amygdala. It's the ancient part of your brain. It doesn't understand space or time.
That's the one question I had, and the other one is just literally just to make sure I understand it, is the different some of the ways that people respond to perceived endings when they anticipate the ending is about to come. In one way that you shared there was creating a crisis, and the way I think about it is emotional blackmail to get the person to stay rather than to end something,
Yeah.
whether it is in a relationship. And while still in a relationship, the other way I can think about it is that self-sabotage kicks in and the other person says, I anticipate you want to end it, I'll rather end it, and it then becomes amputation, and it makes it more traumatic on both parties.
Yeah.
It was just a question of, okay, just so that I can say I didn't end things, or I didn't allow you to end things. I had the power, I ended it first. That kind of a notion of dealing with the impending ending. And so it takes away the ritual, the celebration, and therefore the transition is therefore not a good one. And I like the fact that you said, um, the have a good ending so that you can have a good beginning, and there's no residual issues from what ended. And ending is part of life, and it's actually, when I think about seasonally, that sadly, every year for me, I experience sadness when summer comes to an end because I'm kind of anticipating autumn and winter, which I do not like. So I like spring and I like summer, but in the balance of nature, for growth, for fauna and flora, for the way things are being designed, we need a change of season. And so, and if, and kind of unconsciously we accept it, we complain about it, but the one thing has ended and the new thing has begun. I mean, ushering in the colder weather, in Western Cape, the wetter weather, the windy weather, whatever. So yeah, no, there's way too much I wanted to say, and I know our time is up. But thank you for bringing this, and hopefully the listeners will be encouraged by this, as not to be afraid of endings.
You can talk about both. The whole idea is to talk about the losses, and maybe, we're gonna miss each other, etc. Or oh, this is how I used to be. But it's also about celebrating endings. So yeah.
Celebrating
And
endings. There's a new beginning knocking on your door, and
yeah.
so in essence, this is how you have a good goodbye. And it doesn't matter whether it's temporary or permanent, still have a good goodbye.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Shanaaz.
Absolutely. A pleasure, Jacques.
Yeah.
Be in touch.
And yeah, no, travel safely if we don't manage to chat before you leave.
Yep.
So and we'll definitely in 2 weeks' time chat again
Yes,
online on Clubhouse.
international. Okay,
Yes.
see you. Bye.
Bye.